I'm going to be talking about trade shows. I call it Trade Shows 101. Jason and I are a great resource for you guys all the time, 365 days a year, but this will give you just a quick snippet of kind of the direction we suggest you go in as far as trying to find a show and what to do when you get there. So I might speed along through things, but my card is up at the front, and I believe Jason's might be as well, but feel free to just email us directly if I skip through something that you have a specific question on. Okay. All right, so first we're going to talk about choosing the right show for your brand. Of course, I'm going to tell you it's pool, but you know that's obviously really biased. There's a few things that you need to do before you can pick the right show. And Kristen went into this pretty detailed earlier, and it's what your brand personality is reflected in everything. It's reflected in your PR, it's your social media, it's everything. And it's also reflected in the show that you pick to exhibit in. So who's my brand? Who's gonna wear my line? What do they do? Where do they work? What music do they listen to? And how old are they? So basically, same school of thought. You want to make sure that the people that are buying your brand are the people that are going to be, you know, the same people that are shopping at these retailers that shop the show. You also need to think about who your target retailer is. I can't tell you how many people we speak to when we say, okay, so we want to make sure you're fit for our show. Who are you looking to target? And they say, the phone goes silent, and we have to make sure that you guys are still on. It's really important that you know that. That's one of the basically the biggest things for us to help you, even direct you to a show within Magic. Maybe we're talking to you, and you might be a better fit for Project, or you might be a better fit for WWD at this time. The target retailer is a huge, huge deal. The first thing you want to do is be realistic. I know that's hard sometimes, but I go back to that a lot. You know, you might be a new t-shirt brand and you really, 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 really want to be in Nordstrom's, but maybe you're not even at that production level at that point. There could be a number of reasons. So think about what's realistic for you at this time. Also have your aspirational list. You know, if Fred Siegel is something that you want to do, but you just really know that you've got to get into a couple 10 small boutiques first. Let's talk about those 10 small boutiques and then keep shooting for Fred Siegel. And looking at the brands that you admire, what I would call your peers. So you'll go onto their website, see what other stores they're in. That's a really easy way to do it. If there's brands that you sit next to at one store, go on their website, check it out, find out who else is buying them. And then again, like I mentioned, your production capabilities. So you never want to overpromise anything. You don't want to burn any bridges with a retailer. So make sure that you know what you're capable of doing at this very moment. So what info do you need to know? So you should visit the show. If you haven't gone to the show, it's not a must, but if you can, great. We always invite people to come visit. If you guys would like to come out, and if you're not already exhibiting and you'd like to come out in August, talk to Jason or I. We'll meet you. We'll give you a tour. It's really important to actually go to the show and see what the vibe is, and to see if you feel like you're fit. You might have heard a bunch of stuff about it and got there and felt like it was like, wah-wah, like it's not your thing, you know? Know the exhibiting brands. So if you're speaking to a rep, they should be able to provide you with, you know, if it's early on in the show cycle, they might not have a full list of contracted exhibitors, but they should, at the very least, be able to show you who's exhibited in the past, and you want to make sure that you feel like you are fit within those brands. Same with the retailers. They should be able to tell you, you know, their top 50 retailers that attend. If they can't tell you that, then that's a red flag. And then, like I mentioned, what's the vibe? So do you feel comfortable there? Does it feel intimidating? It might always feel a little intimidating at first. But you know, with pool, I find that most people, when they come to visit, they're actually not intimidated at all, because it's such a relaxed environment, and you want to feel like you're going to be able to relax and be serious about business. There's some shows out there that are just a party, and so if you want to just party, then I can give you the names of those. But we, at Magic and all the shows within Magic are really about business. And we love to have fun at pool, but we also want you guys to go home and have some orders in your hands. So make sure that the vibe works for you. So this is just an example. These are some examples of what Pool or Magic as a company, any of the shows within Magic will be able to give to you so that you can see some of the statistics about retailers and buyers and about social media reach. Same with the brands. They should be able to show you something like this. Sorry. Brands. And then the retailers. So this is just an example of what we share with you guys. So some other important questions when you're trying to pick a show. You should be asking people what makes their show different, what's the unique value. I can tell you that Pool Trade Show is the only show out there right now for art and design driven brands, and that we focus on emerging. So there's nothing else out there like that, and I'm able to tell you that as soon as you ask me, and so should anybody else worth their salt. What's the retail attendance of your last show, and how many are you expecting? This will allow you to do your spend per buyer. A lot of people don't do this, but if you calculate real easy math, you take how much it's going to cost me for a booth and how many people I'm going to see, you're going to find out how much it's going to cost you per buyer to join the show. And it's actually, if it's got good attendance, it should be really surprising. With Pool, it ranges to between about 50 to 60 cents per buyer, which I think is pretty amazing. And then how many days on average does the buyer shop the show? Again, some more buyer profile breakdown. Where are they coming from? What parts of the country are they coming from? Are the CEOs shopping? Are the head buyers shopping? Who's coming from accessories? We can always answer questions for you like that, especially the farther along we get into the show cycle. We can pull some information. Again, it's kind of like with you guys exhibiting. With the attendees, it's the same way. We have to get them, registered, and then we're able to give a little bit of information on that stats. How do you market the show and me? I rarely get asked that. There's actually a brand in here that was really good and asked me, how do you market? Is there anything, you guys, your marketing budgets are tapped. What can you do for me? Can I get a post on Instagram? Can I get some love on Facebook? See what they can do for you, see what they do as a show overall, but then see if there's any free marketing things. We do a pull-out in our directory. We have an online brand book. There's a ton of stuff that's completely free that Pool offers as a marketing tool for you guys. Do you have any brand testimonials? It's always great to hear if there's a brand that you admire that loves the show that you're going to be in. That's reassuring. And is there any additional costs outside of my booth fee? So that's a big one, and we'll get into budgeting in a few more slides. But you never want to be caught off guard. And so with Pool, all of our booths are turnkey, meaning they come with everything that you'd ever need, including 500 watts of electricity. But some shows don't do that, so it's a good thing to ask because that's going to hit your bottom line. Okay, so this is Pool's kind of mission statement. It's where art, design, and commerce intersect, connecting emerging brands with the most visionary retailers in fashion. So that's who Pool is. If you came here not knowing, now you know. Okay, so now you've chosen Pool, right, everybody? So now what? Again, being realistic. You've got to go into it with realistic goals. Is it really all about the Benjamins? Is it really all about the money that you're going to take home at the end of the day, the amount of orders you write? Think about that. So, remember, it's not a long-term investment. It's a long-term investment, not a get-rich-quick scheme. So a lot of people, they'll come in and they'll say, I have to write a $50,000 order, or else this is not worth my time. Well, that's being, again, unrealistic. You want to think about things about, what do I need to break even? Basically, This is what I've spent. I budgeted everything out. This is what I need to break even. And is that okay for you? I like to say for your first couple shows, yeah. I mean, that would be, if you break even, I think that would be great because you've probably done a lot more, with the people that you've met and the buyers that you've touched. Same thing, network value. What buyers, press, and bloggers did you meet? Maybe you didn't hit your break-even mark, but you met somebody from Refinery 29 and they're doing a post on you. I mean, that could be, you got to think about it in those terms. That could lead to, your online business skyrocketing. So think about who you met, who you networked with, and the feedback that you're going to get. So, feedback from buyers is invaluable, and you find that this piece in your collection you thought was going to be amazing, and nobody responded to it, and so you nip that in the bud right there, and so it's basically your research all in 3 days. Okay, so now let's get prepped. Budgeting, scary. I don't like to do it either. Nobody does spreadsheets. Ew. We're like, you guys are designers. You guys are creatives. We don't like to talk about money. So a couple of things that you want to keep in mind with the booth expenses. So obviously you have the cost. Some other things to consider are shipping and drayage. Now, for the most part with pool brands, there's not a lot of concern with drayage. Drayage is we have unions that work in our convention centers, and it's the cost to bring really big sized booths into pool. That doesn't happen much, but it's something to ask about if you're shipping crates. But then if you're just doing something as little as shipping a FedEx box full of your samples, that costs money, and you can't ignore that $100 that costs. That should go into your budget. Electrical, as I mentioned, electrical comes with all of our booths, but some shows they don't, so you want to ask about that. It's not a big spend again, but it is a spend. And then your furniture, your walls, your deco. Again, you can show up and just put your clothes on the racks and you'd be good to go. Go with a minimalist look. But if you're spending $200 here and there on some props for your booth, you want to make sure that you add that into your budget as well. Travel, it adds up. So travel's not just your flight. It's your taxis, it's your gas, it's anything that's going to get you from A to Z. You want to make sure that, again, little line items, but they add up. I know if you guys have ever done a show in New York, hopping in a cab, if you're not taking the subway, wherever you're going, and this could be not just to the show, it could be out to dinner, to take a buyer out to dinner. Make sure that you're adding all of those. Sales materials. So this is the fun stuff that you get to give to the buyers when they come to your booth and they really want to hang out with you. Line sheets. Everyone here has talked about a line sheets. They're an absolute must. Obviously, it's a way for the buyer to take, basically take your collection home with them. You can't write an order without a form. So this is it's a little old school. Some people still want them written down. It's always good, but a lot of people, you can email orders now. There's online systems, but it's always good to have a way, because if somebody, some mom and pop that wants to place, a $5,000 order with you and they only wanted you to write it down, you've got something to do it with. And then, this is something that I like to have. I like to suggest people have their terms printed out if you know what your terms are. Some people don't when they come to pool, but it's a good thing to give to the buyers to take with them. And then business cards. You will fly through these. You would be really surprised. So anything that's like a business card or a brochure, some people spend a lot of money on some really nice versions of their brochure or their line sheet, and then they'll have some others that they use and that they give out to everybody. And then if they have the special buyer, then they'll give them the full brochure. So you don't need to have all of that, but just keep in mind that you do need to have those things. So what's on your line sheet? We get asked that a lot. And I can send all of this to anybody that wants to email me. Again, you probably got an RSVP from me, but my card's up at the front, so I can send this to you guys so you've got it. Obviously, your branding and your logo, your contact information, a photo of the product. You'd be surprised. Name, style, name, and sizes, material, the wholesale and suggested retail, I find a lot of the people that send us, Jason and I look at line sheets all day long when people are applying to exhibit, and one of those two will be missing. The wholesale needs to at least be on there. The minimum order, if you have one. And we're going to do a Q&A with some dudes that are really knowledgeable in the industry, and we're going to talk a little bit about minimum orders with them. But if you do have one and you know what it is, let's put that on there. And then your delivery dates, what your capabilities are of shipping. Okay, so what's your merchandising plan? Keep it simple and leave the glitter confetti at home. So, think about the space that you've reserved, and think about the store that you want to be in. The easiest way, if you're stumped about how you want your booth to look, is to mimic the store that you want to be in. Find a corner of anthropology that you really dig, or a display that you really dig, and do something like that. That's the simplest way. I think a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around it, that I suggest, is mimicking a part of a store that you admire. The other thing is, as far as just stuff, it's going minimalist is always better. If you do visit Pool, or you come to the show and walk magic, if you walk into our show, the tents, or even into the project, it's very minimalist. It's all about the clothes. They let the clothes speak for themselves. So when you've got too much going on, and you've got like a shit hanging over here, and this is candy over here, and it's too much, and the buyer's probably not going to want to hang out because they're not really sure what you're selling at the end of the day. We have a Q&A later on with Matthew from Late Sunday Afternoon, and he did something completely different, and he actually pulled, he's from Venice, so he's our little hippie kid, and he actually pulled all the furniture out of the booth and said, I don't want the furniture, and actually set his scarves up on the floor and sat on the floor and had meetings with buyers on the floor. And so halfway through, I checked in with him, and I was like, how's that going? And he's like, people are digging it. They really like to sit down. They like to sit and chill, and it was completely, I think it's the first time I've ever seen anybody do that, but he and his booth mate sat on the floor and showed their whole collection that way. If it works for your brand, I don't want to see everyone sit on the floor, though. Okay, setup time. So get there early so you're not late. If you asked me where I would suggest spending a little extra money, it would be to get there the day before. So many times, I know your guys' budgets are tight, and you'll fly in at the very last second to rush in and find out that your samples didn't get there, or the flight was delayed, or you put all your samples in some luggage that hasn't arrived. There's so many things. If you guys can just get in at least a day early and pay for that extra hotel night, it makes you a more sane person. It makes me a more sane person. It's much better. And then, making sure, like I said, that you've got everything, that your samples have arrived. Rather than getting into Vegas and hitting the pool, go to FedEx first and make sure your samples are there. Make sure you've got everything you need. Make sure that anything that, you need to plug in at your booth, if you've got a neon sign or just even your laptop, go plug everything in. Just like how we do this event, we want to make sure that everything's running before you guys get here. Do that first, and then you can go have a cocktail. Okay, it's showtime, don't freak. Okay, what to bring. These are the little silly mommy things that we like to remind you about, but most of the time your shows are gonna be in a convention center. It's fucking cold, sorry, but it's cold. And we do it that way to keep everybody awake, keep the buyers moving. So bring layers. You always wanna have a couple extra sweaters. Make sure you got your laptop and charger. I know that's a no-brainer, but people forget them all the time. Water and snacks. So a lot of times it's just one of you guys in a booth with pool. Maybe it's another person if you're lucky, but you might not be able to go leave your booth to go get a snack during the day, and you definitely don't want to lose steam. So having that water, having those snacks, we try to keep the concessions close, but you step out of your booth for 5 minutes, and the retailer that you've been waiting to see all day walks by, and then you've missed them. So make sure you got your nuts and everything. Okay, so another thing to think about is, what are you wearing? You should be wearing your clothes if you can. If it's the sunglasses, they should be on the top of your head. They should be, and anybody that's in your booth representing you should have it on if they can. Obviously, the men shouldn't be wearing women's wear unless that's your angle. I don't know. We have that too. Get there before they do. Get to the show floor 30 minutes before the show floor opens. Make sure nothing's like fallen over in the night. I can't tell you, we do a sweep every night, and then we do a sweep every morning before you guys get there. And something will have fallen down, and a mannequin might have knocked over, and then all of a sudden it's 9 a.m. show's opening, and you're scrambling to redress this mannequin. Just get there before the buyers do, so at 9 a.m. doors open, you're ready to go. What does your stance say? So, body language is everything. It's not the first time you've heard that. Make sure that you've got an open presence. Make sure that you're not, folded and closed up. I can't tell you how many times I see people like this on their phone. Buyers don't want it. Put your phone down, look up, engage. That's way more inviting to people. Be a buddy. So again, you guys might need to, you're gonna have to go to the bathroom at some point. So, help the guy next to you out. Pool's very community driven. Everybody really, really likes to help out each other, real supportive, and nobody's, you're all competing for buyer attention, obviously, but there's really not that feeling there. So, offer your booth buddy next to you. I'll watch you if you need to run to the restroom, or I got you, I'll keep the buyer here, that type of thing. And just be friendly. Don't talk about each other. It's not high school. It's everybody. There's enough for everybody. What's for lunch? Don't eat in your booth. That's why I said the nuts and stuff, because those you can throw in your mouth, a little bar real quick. But I've seen people eating Caesar salads. I've seen people having a full-on burger. It's gross, and buyers don't want to hang out with you when all they can smell is onions coming from your booth and from you. So if you're by yourself, just step off to the side, finish your so you can see your booth, finish your food, come on back, and then don't be stinky. If you smell like onions or you smell like cigarettes, no, they're not going to want to hang out with you. Nobody else does. So why would the buyer? Bravery with buyers. So we're going to talk about, again, in the Q&As a little bit later, because I know that's always a really big question with you guys, is how to get buyer attention, things like that. So I'll touch on it a little bit here. Remember, it's their job to buy things. That's what they were hired to do. That's why they're in Vegas or wherever in New York, wherever you are. They're supposed to buy stuff. So don't be afraid, for the ask at the end of a little sesh of showing your line. It's their job. What's your 30-second elevator pitch? This is super old school, but these guys don't have a lot of time at all, particularly because they're running from appointment to appointment, and so maybe something caught their eye. You want to know, and you want to be able to tell the buyer in 30 seconds why your brand's cool, why it's different, what's your brand story, something that just stands out, something that's going to grab them. Act like you know, and then find out. So if somebody comes up from a retailer, and most with Magic we have badges, and you'll be able to tell by the color that they are, or by the lanyard, what if they're an exhibitor or if they're an attendee, a buyer, and you may look down at their tag while you're talking to them and not recognize the retailer. Just because you don't recognize it doesn't mean it's not cool, doesn't mean it's not where you want to be. It could be the hippest new streetwear store in Chicago, and you just haven't found it yet. So treat everybody with the same respect, even if you're not familiar with what their badge says. And then don't count anybody out, kind of along the same lines. But Some of the bigger retailers will actually take their badges off or turn them around. So if somebody doesn't have a badge, don't assume they just snuck in. They could be from Neiman Marcus. You have no idea. And then consistency, longevity, and relevance. So if I could tattoo this on my forehead, I would for you guys. Don't be upset if a buyer takes your line sheet, sounds really interested, and then doesn't place the order. They took it with them. Sometimes they just want to see that you have the consistency, and they want to see you come back again. They want to come back to Magic and make sure you're going to be there. That tells them that your brand has longevity and that you're still relevant. So many times people say, oh, I'm just going to take off. February show was great for me, but I'm going to take off August. I got to go on vacay. And then I'll come back in February. Well, by that time, the buyer that saw you the first time, they've come back again and hopefully was looking for you to write an order, wanted to see that your brand was still relevant. They don't see you there, and they're open to buy, just went to somebody else. So it's all about consistency. Don't get bummed out if you don't get that first order. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Suburban Riot. They did the kale sweatshirt that Beyonce made crazy. So they've been a pool brand for a really long time. They're now in project. And it took them 4 sit-downs at pool with Nordstrom's before Nordstrom's wrote an order. But they checked for them every single time, and they had a meeting with them every single time. So don't get discouraged. So what else should you do besides talk to buyers? Hopefully you're too busy to do anything else, but there's other stuff you could do. Meet your show support. So you should make sure you've met Jason or I or your rep or whoever it is. Make sure that you know who you're talking to in the emails. Walk the show. So if you have time, you should always walk your show. If you can, walk the other shows as well. Pool is viewed as an incubator within Magic. So a lot of times we'll have emerging brands that start with us, and like I mentioned with Suburban Riot, they'll graduate, we call it graduating, on to other shows. So you want to know what the other shows are about, what they look like if you can. You should, in addition to that, you should, sometimes people, they'll come do the show and they'll say, I didn't really feel like I fit with the brands that you guys placed me near. And the first thing I'll ask you is, where did you see yourself fitting? So I want to know where else on the floor you thought you might be a better fit, that you might have more success, that might be, might get a better response. So you should at the very least know your own show floor. And make some friends. These people in pool that have been, some of them have been in pool, I mentioned it's an incubator, but some people decide to stay. We have brands that have been there 8, 9, 10 years, and they just feel at home. They feel like it's a community there. So, these people hang out with each other on the weekends, and then they go see each other like it's like a big reunion, basically. They're not your enemies, they're your friends. Okay, so the show's a wrap. So what's next? It's not just, you don't just come home and you're exhausted because you've been in Vegas for 5 days, your skin's dehydrated, you have had too many martinis, like you just really want to go into a hole and hide, but you can't do that because you guys are your own business for the most part. So obviously put out any fires. If you've got anything crazy that was going on, that's the first thing that you need in order to get shipped, something like that. Take care of that first, then you can kind of move on. Follow up on all your leads. That should be the first thing that you do. Anybody that didn't write an order with, they should get a thank you for stopping by and seeing me, email, a phone call, something. Do not let it wait 2 weeks. Get it on it right away. And then send your invoices out. So if you have written orders and you want to make sure, and you have the certain terms that you're invoicing, like for instance on a net 30 or something like that, you don't want to, sometimes you guys cash flow is like a kind of scary situation. So if you've waited 2 weeks to send out that invoice, now you're 6 weeks behind where you should be. So make sure you're sending those out right away. And then plan your calendar. So plan out, you've made promises to ship things on certain dates. Make sure that you know when everything is going to go out and whose order you need to work on first. make good on your promises. And so this goes for the buyers that you talk to, it goes to the booth buddy that you met next door and you told you had a great contact with. If you've promised anything, anyone, if you've promised, a buyer was too busy or you didn't have any line sheets left and was running out the door, I'll send you a line sheet, send the line sheet, and then do your research. So this goes back to, it can be anything, but thinking about, there's that buyer from that store that you weren't sure about. Go on and check out their store. See what it's all about. Things like that. Anything that came up while you're gone. If a booth buddy across the way told you about a retailer, or they told you about a media outlet that you should check out, or somebody you should be following on Instagram. Do all of that stuff that you said that you were going to do. And then the scary part, that's the money again. So review your budget and adjust. So did I spend too much on drinks? Did I, could I have spent a little more taking that buyer out? Could I have gotten there and maybe not done so much with the graphics in my booth? Adjust your budget for the next show. It'll be fresh in your mind at that point. And then from there, you'll start to see what your ROI is. This is not something that you'll be able to tell immediately, because what will happen is some of the buyers that you spoke to might come back a month later and place an order with you. You'll really, I feel like, and maybe these guys that are going to speak to it later can tell you a little bit better, but I feel like, for a pool brand, because sometimes they're going home and thinking about it, it can take a couple months before you really, really can see, okay, this lead came from that show, and they've placed an order with me 2 months later. That way you'll be able to see what your true ROI is. Write down your feedback. Again, while these things are fresh in your mind, same with the budgets. If there's something that you thought, oh, I didn't need to do that, or I could have done that, or even if you have some feedback for Jason and I, and this is how I think we could do something better, or what can we do this time, or I'd like to do marketing, or I like what that guy did. Write all that stuff down, contact whoever you need to get that moving. And then fill folks in. So let people know you just went and did a trade show and met all these cool people. Tell people on social media where you've been. You should be doing it while you're there. But if you got an amazing order with so-and-so, take a picture of the product and say, this is shipping out to Bloomie's this week. Met them at Pool Trade Show. Let people know how cool you are. Get contracted. Have to put that plug in there. So shows will sell out. Trade shows. So if you know that time you're gonna plan on returning, get contracted with us. Make sure that you save a spot for the next show. Post away, kind of same thing. Filling in. Make sure people know where you were at. Keep up on the networking. All the people that you met there. Staying in touch with them. Setting up a time to go have coffee, whatever, drinks, if you're in the neighborhood. See what they're doing. If you guys are doing consumer shows, see what other consumer shows that they're doing. If you're doing a Renegade Craft Fair, or a Crafty Bastards or whatever, find out what they're doing and stay in touch with them, and then you guys can hook up when you get there. And then review your success. So that's this is basically everything all wrapped into one. What was my ROI like? Who did I meet? You could almost write yourself a quick little deck about this is what went right. And that is the end of it for me. If you guys have any questions, I can answer them, or I can always answer them in email. Jason or I are available. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Cool.